When my daughter and her fiancé pressured me into selling my cherished home of 30 years to fund their extravagant $175,000 wedding, they never expected me to agree so quickly, or to discover 6 months later that my downsizing had been hiding a clever plan that would teach them both an unforgettable lesson about entitlement, true love, and the real meaning of family legacy. Before we continue, if you're new here, make sure you subscribe, because tomorrow I'm sharing another family story about boundary setting that will completely change how you handle difficult relatives. Now, let's get back to it. This photo was taken at my 65th birthday celebration last spring. There I am, surrounded by smiling faces at the oak dining table that my late husband Thomas built when we first bought our Victorian farmhouse. My daughter, Vanessa, is beside me, her arm around my shoulders, while her boyfriend Ryan stands behind us, raising a glass in toast. My son Peter and his wife are across the table with their twins. We look like the perfect family celebrating a milestone together. What the camera doesn't show is the conversation that happened just minutes before this photo. Vanessa had pulled me into the kitchen, supposedly to help with the cake. "Mom, Ryan proposed last night," she whispered, flashing an enormous diamond ring. "We want to get married at Rose Hill Manor this December." "December?" I said, surprised. "That's only 8 months away. And isn't Rose Hill booked years in advance?" "They had a cancellation," she explained quickly. "But we need to put down a $20,000 deposit by next week." Her eyes drifted to the window overlooking my 3-acre property. "I was thinking, this house is really too much for you now that Dad's gone. You're always saying how much work the garden is." I felt a chill despite the warm kitchen. "What exactly are you suggesting, Vanessa?" "It's the perfect time to downsize, Mom," she said, her voice slipping into what I called her handling mom tone. "The market is hot. You could sell this place, get a nice condo in town, and help us have the wedding of our dreams with the difference." Before I could respond, she swept back into the dining room for the cake. As everyone sang happy birthday, I stared at my daughter, wondering when she had started seeing my home as a financial resource rather than the heart of our family memories. I'd been an elementary school librarian for 30 years before retiring, while Thomas had run a custom furniture business from the workshop behind our house. We'd bought this 1890s farmhouse as a neglected fixer-upper and restored it room by room, weekend by weekend. The porch where we'd spent summer evenings, the window seats where I'd read to our children, the garden that supplied our table, every corner held pieces of our life together. When Thomas died of a heart attack 2 years ago, friends suggested I sell and move somewhere more manageable. But the house had become my anchor in grief, the place that still held Thomas's presence in every handcrafted detail. After my birthday, Vanessa's calls and visits increased dramatically. She began sending me condo listings and scheduling viewings without asking. When I hesitated, she enlisted her brother Peter. "Mom, Vanessa's just looking out for your future," he said during a Sunday visit, though he seemed uncomfortable with the conversation. "The property taxes alone are eating into your retirement." What neither mentioned, but what became increasingly clear, was that the perfect timing had everything to do with Vanessa's wedding plans and little to do with my well-being. Each time I expressed doubt, Vanessa's wedding vision grew more elaborate and, not coincidentally, more expensive. "Ryan's parents are contributing $50,000, she informed me, arriving unexpectedly with wedding magazines and a spreadsheet. "But the total budget is looking closer to $175,000 if we want the Winter Wonderland theme with ice sculptures and imported flowers." I nearly choked on my tea. $175,000? For one day? "It's not just one day, Mom," she countered. "It's the most important day of my life. The photos and memories will last forever." What hung unspoken between us was her expectation that I would contribute the remaining $125,000, not as a gift I might choose to give, but as an obligation I was failing to fulfill. "I've saved $30,000 I can contribute," I said carefully. "That's the limit of what I can comfortably offer. Vanessa's face darkened. But if you sold this house, you'd clear at least $600,000 after buying a reasonable place. Are you seriously telling me your attachment to some old wood and plaster is more important than my happiness? The conversation ended with Vanessa storming out, and Peter calling later to say I was being unnecessarily difficult and stuck in the past. That night, I sat on the porch swing Thomas had hung, watching fireflies rise from the meadow. Was I being selfish? Was my attachment to our home unhealthy? I called my oldest friend Eleanor, who had known Thomas and me since college. "They're manipulating you, Grace," she said bluntly. "Your house isn't just property. It's your financial security for the next 20 years. And Thomas didn't rebuild that place so his daughter could blow it on ice sculptures." Her words resonated with something troubling me. Thomas had been meticulous about ensuring my financial security. He'd been equally clear about our children. He'd paid for their education in full, but believed they should build their own lives beyond that. "Give them roots and wings," he'd say, "not a permanent nest in our tree." The pressure mounted steadily. Vanessa began bringing Ryan to these conversations, his presence adding weight to her demands. "My parents have already put down deposits, based on your verbal commitment," she claimed, though I had made no such promise. "We'll lose everything if we don't secure the vendors by next month." Ryan, a successful real estate agent, added his professional opinion. "The market's peaking now, Grace. If you wait even 6 months to sell, you could lose 50 to 100Ks in value." The culmination came during a family dinner I hosted, hoping to ease tensions. As we finished dessert, Vanessa clinked her glass and announced that she and Ryan had big news. "We've set the date," she beamed. "December 18th at Rose Hill Manor. And we've already sent the save the dates." My stomach dropped as Peter and his wife offered congratulations. Vanessa hadn't just been pressuring me. She'd been creating a situation where I would appear to be ruining her wedding if I didn't comply with her financial demands. As everyone discussed winter wedding details, I noticed Ryan studying my reaction with a calculating expression that sent a chill through me. In that moment, I realized this wasn't just about a wedding. This was about my daughter and her fiancé viewing my home, my financial security, as an asset they were entitled to leverage for their benefit. That night, after everyone had gone, I made a decision. I would appear to give Vanessa what she wanted, but on terms she never expected. The next morning, I made 2 calls, one to Eleanor and another to James Wilson, the attorney who had handled Thomas's estate and had become a trusted advisor. What Vanessa didn't know was that I had already been working on a plan of my own, one that would test the true nature of her relationship with Ryan and, ultimately, teach her the lesson about love and entitlement that Thomas and I had apparently failed to instill. The day after I made those calls, I invited Vanessa to lunch at Maple Creek Cafe, the quaint restaurant where Thomas and I had celebrated our anniversaries. It was a strategic choice, a place filled with memories of a marriage built on mutual respect and genuine love, not financial transactions. "I've been thinking about what you said," I told her once we were seated. "About the house being too much for me." Vanessa's eyes lit up with barely concealed excitement. "Really? I'm so glad you're being practical about this, Mom." I studied my daughter's face, the same face I'd gazed at in wonder when the nurse first placed her in my arms 38 years ago. She had Thomas's determined chin and my green eyes, but somewhere along the way, something had shifted in her values. Perhaps it was my fault. Had Thomas and I given her too much? Had we sheltered her from the financial realities that had shaped our own characters? "I think you're right," I continued carefully. "It might be time for a change." "That's wonderful." Vanessa reached across the table and squeezed my hand. For a moment, I glimpsed the affectionate daughter I remembered, before the wedding planning had transformed her. "I can help you with everything. I already have 3 condos lined up to see this weekend." "Actually," I said, "I've already spoken with James Wilson about my options." Her smile faltered slightly. Dad's old lawyer? Why? You don't need legal advice to sell your house. Ryan knows all the best realtors in town. James has been helping me with financial planning since your father passed, I explained, and he raised some important considerations about downsizing at my age. Vanessa's expression shifted to barely concealed impatience. Like what? Tax implications? Retirement planning? Long-term care considerations? I took a sip of water, noting how quickly her eyes glazed over at these practical matters, the very same practical matters she insisted I needed to face. But he has a proposal that might work for everyone. Her attention snapped back immediately. What kind of proposal? A graduated ownership plan, I said, using the technical-sounding term James and I had concocted. It provides me with ongoing security while allowing me to release some equity. Now. I could almost see the calculations running behind Vanessa's eyes. How much money might be immediately available for crystal champagne flutes and hand-calligraphed place cards? How would that work? She asked, trying to sound casual. It's complicated, I replied, deliberately vague. There are legal documents involved. But essentially, I would sell the house to a family trust, then lease it back while living in a smaller place. The trust would release a portion of the equity immediately, with the rest coming in annual distributions. How large a portion? Vanessa asked. The question that I knew was uppermost in her mind. Potentially enough to cover what you need for the wedding, I answered. James is drawing up the paperwork now. I'd need you and Ryan to come to a meeting next week to explain everything. Why does Ryan need to be there? She asked, suddenly. Wary. Because it affects the family assets long-term, I explained. And since you're planning to marry, both of you need to understand the arrangement. James insists on it. Legal liability concerns. Vanessa agreed readily, already texting Ryan under the table. I continued eating my salad, feeling a curious mixture of sadness and resolve. The trap was baited, though it gave me no pleasure to think of it that way. This wasn't about punishing my daughter. It was about teaching her what Thomas and I had apparently failed to communicate before. That love and respect go hand in hand, and that family isn't an ATM to be accessed at will. The following week, I met with James to finalize our plan. His downtown office with its leather chairs and oak bookshelves had always intimidated Vanessa, another reason I'd chosen to have our meeting there rather than at my home. Are you certain about this? James asked as he reviewed the documents we'd prepared. It's rather unconventional. I'm certain, I replied. Thomas would approve. He always said a parent's job is to prepare the children for the road, not prepare the road for the children. James nodded thoughtfully. He was a wise man. I just want to be sure you understand the potential consequences to your relationship with Vanessa. If my relationship with my daughter can't survive her discovering I won't be manipulated out of my home and financial security, then it's not a relationship worth preserving, I said, more firmly than I felt. The truth was, the thought of Vanessa's anger and potential estrangement cut deeply. But I reminded myself that enabling her entitled behavior would only harm her in the long run. 2 days later, Vanessa and Ryan arrived at James's office, both dressed impressively, she in a tailored dress that probably cost more than a month of my pension. He in a suit that screamed successful young professional. I was already seated in the conference room with James, who rose to greet them with professional courtesy. Ms. Harrington, Mr. Calloway, thank you for coming. Please have a seat. James gestured to the chairs across the polished conference table. Mrs. Peterson has asked me to prepare a proposal regarding the potential sale of her home and the distribution of the resulting assets. Ryan immediately took control, leaning forward with the confidence of someone accustomed to being the smartest person in the room. We appreciate your thoroughness, Mr. Wilson, but this doesn't need to be complicated. We've already researched comparable sales in the area. The house should fetch around $750,000 in the current market. After purchasing a suitable condo for Mrs. Peterson say $150,000 that leaves approximately $600,000 in equity. The presumptuous breakdown of my assets made my skin crawl, but I maintained a neutral expression. James merely nodded. You've clearly given this some thought, Mr. Calloway. However, Mrs. Peterson's position is somewhat more complex than a simple sale and purchase. He slid folders across the table to each of them. This is her proposal. Vanessa opened her folder eagerly, but her enthusiasm visibly dimmed as she scanned the first page. A family financial security trust? Mom, what is this? As I mentioned, I said calmly, a graduated ownership plan. If you'll read through the document, the structure is explained in detail. Ryan flipped through the pages with increasing agitation. This isn't a sale at all, he finally burst out. It's some kind of complex deferred transaction with... He turned to another page. Annual distribution caps and healthcare contingencies? James leaned back in his chair. Mrs. Peterson's proposal is indeed structured to ensure her financial security through retirement while still accommodating your immediate needs. The trust would provide an initial distribution of $50,000, with subsequent annual distributions of no more than $25,000, contingent on Mrs. Peterson's continued good health and the absence of major care expenses. Vanessa's face had gone pale. $50,000? That barely covers the venue rental and catering. It's actually quite generous, James commented mildly. Most financial advisors would caution against any large distributions from principal at this stage of retirement planning. Ryan's expression had transformed from confidence to calculation. He flipped back to the beginning of the document. Who exactly would control this trust? Mrs. Peterson would remain the primary trustee, James explained, with a professional co-trustee from our firm. In the event of her incapacitation, control would transfer to the co-trustee with advisory input from family members. This is ridiculous, Vanessa said, closing her folder with a snap. Mom, we're talking about a simple real estate transaction, not some complicated trust fund. Why are you making this so difficult? I met my daughter's eyes calmly. Because my home isn't just an asset to be liquidated for your convenience, Vanessa. It's my financial security for what could be 20 or more years of retirement. Did you research the cost of assisted living facilities? They run between $5,000 and $10,000 per month. At the higher end, that's $120,000 per year. Ryan leaned forward, adopting a conciliatory tone that sent warning signals through me. Grace, we understand your concerns about long-term security, but this trust structure is needlessly complicated. What if we helped you find a slightly higher-end condo, say in the $200,000 range, and you released $400,000 to us now? We could establish a simpler investment account with the remaining funds for your future needs. The U.S., in his statement, wasn't lost on me. Not a gift to Vanessa, but a transfer to both of them. And notably, his counteroffer still left plenty for their extravagant wedding while giving them control over my remaining funds. I've made my decision, I said quietly. This is the only arrangement I'm willing to consider. If it doesn't meet your needs, I understand. Vanessa's face flushed with anger. This isn't what we discussed, Mom. You agreed to help with the wedding. I am helping, I replied. I'm offering $50,000, which is significantly more than the $30,000 I originally mentioned. That's in addition to the countless hours I've already spent addressing invitations, researching florists, and listening to your thoughts on bridesmaids' dresses. But we've already put deposits down on vendors based on a much larger budget. She protested. We'll lose thousands if we cancel now. I felt a stab of maternal guilt, quickly suppressed by the memory of her calculating efforts to manipulate me. I'm sorry to hear that. But I never committed to selling my house outright. Vanessa, that was your assumption. Ryan was studying me with new interest, as if seeing me clearly for the first time. There's something else going on here, he said slowly. This isn't just about protecting your assets. He was sharper than I'd given him credit for. But then, you don't become a successful real estate agent without being able to read people. You're right, I admitted. This is also about respecting boundaries, about understanding the difference between asking for help and making demands, about recognizing that love doesn't mean unlimited access to someone else's resources. Vanessa stood up, tears of frustration in her eyes. I can't believe you're doing this to me, to us. After everything Dad and I did for you. Her words struck like a physical blow. What exactly did you do for me, Vanessa? She faltered, perhaps hearing how entitled her statement had sounded. I just meant, we're family. We're supposed to support each other? Yes, we are, I agreed softly. But support isn't the same as sacrifice. And it certainly isn't the same as being bullied into financial decisions that could leave me vulnerable for the rest of my life. Ryan placed a restraining hand on Vanessa's arm. Let's take some time to review this proposal properly, he said, his professional demeanor reasserting itself. Perhaps there's a compromise we haven't considered? I could see the wheels turning, in his mind, looking for angles, loopholes, pressure points. I'd anticipated this reaction. It was, after all, exactly what James and I had planned for. Of course, James interjected smoothly. Take whatever time you need, but Mrs. Peterson's position is quite firm on the fundamental structure. As they left the office, Vanessa refused to meet my eyes. Ryan, on the other hand, gave me an assessing look that confirmed my suspicions about him. He wasn't just disappointed about the money. He was reevaluating me as an adversary rather than an easy mark. Once they were gone, I let out a long breath. That went exactly as expected. James nodded grimly. Phase 1 complete. Are you prepared for what comes next? I have to be, I replied, for Vanessa's sake as much as my own. What I didn't say, what I could barely admit to myself, was how deeply it hurt to see the naked calculation in my daughter's eyes, the quick shift from affection to anger when the money wasn't forthcoming in the amount she expected. Had that coldness always been there, hidden beneath the surface? Or had I somehow cultivated it through decades of well-intentioned but ultimately damaging parental generosity? I left James's office with a heavy heart but strengthened resolve. The next move would be Vanessa and Ryan's, and it would tell me everything I needed to know about their relationship and about my daughter's true character. Either way, there would be no turning back from the path I'd chosen. 3 days passed without a word from Vanessa. This was the longest we'd gone without speaking since her wedding planning began, and while the silence was painful, it also confirmed I'd been right to take a stand. When communication is conditional on compliance, it isn't genuine connection, but manipulation. On the 4th day, my doorbell rang just after dinner. I opened it to find Ryan standing on my porch alone, his expression carefully neutral. May I come in, Grace? He asked, using the confident tone that had probably served him well in closing real estate deals. I hesitated, then stepped aside. Where's Vanessa? At home. She doesn't know I'm here. He followed me into the living room, declining my offer of tea. His eyes scanned the space with new interest, lingering on the hand-carved mantelpiece and built-in bookshelves Thomas had crafted, from oak salvaged from a historic building downtown. You have a beautiful home, he said, and for once he didn't sound like he was appraising its market value. Thomas was clearly talented. Thank you, I replied cautiously. What can I do for you, Ryan? He sat on the edge of the sofa, leaning forward with his elbows on his knees. I wanted to talk to you directly, without Vanessa's emotions in the mix. I think we may have gotten off on the wrong foot. That was an understatement if I'd ever heard one. In what way? You see me as someone trying to take advantage of you and Vanessa's relationship to access your assets? He held up his hand when I started to respond. And I understand why. I came on too strong with the real estate advice, and I didn't consider how it might appear to you. His self-awareness surprised me, though I remained wary. "What is it you want, Ryan?" "To explain my position," he replied, "and to propose a different approach." I settled into Thomas's old armchair, mentally preparing for whatever sales pitch was coming. "I'm listening. First, I want you to know that I love Vanessa deeply. She's brilliant, passionate, and determined, qualities I admire greatly." He paused, choosing his next words carefully. "But she can also be intense when she sets her mind on something. The wedding has become an all-consuming focus for her." "I've noticed," I said dryly. His lip quirked in a half-smile. "Yes? Well, what you may not know is that I've been trying to moderate her expectations. The ice sculptures? The imported flowers? Those weren't my ideas. But you didn't discourage them either," I pointed out. Ryan sighed, running a hand through his hair. "No, I didn't, and that's on me. The truth is, I got caught up in it too, wanting to give her everything she wanted, to start our marriage with her dream wedding." He looked around the room again. "But I never intended for that to come at the expense of your security." I studied his face, searching for signs of insincerity. "Why are you telling me this now?" "Because I've been thinking about what you said in James's office, about respecting boundaries and understanding the difference between asking for help and making demands." He leaned back, his posture less sales pitch and more conversational. "My parents didn't have much when I was growing up. Everything I have, I earned through hard work. I respect what you and Thomas built here, and the principles behind it." His words sounded genuine, but I'd been in this game too long to take them at face value. "What exactly are you proposing, Ryan?" "A compromise," he replied. "Vanessa and I scale back the wedding significantly. No ice sculptures, no imported flowers. A lovely but reasonable celebration within a budget we can manage without requiring you to liquidate your primary asset." This was not what I'd expected. "And Vanessa is on board with this?" His expression turned rueful. "Not yet. That's the second part of what I wanted to discuss with you. I was hoping we could present a united front. If she sees both of us standing, firm on the same principles, she might finally hear what we're saying." Now I was truly surprised. "You want us to work together?" "I do." Ryan's expression turned earnest. "Grace, I don't want to start my marriage with Vanessa by encouraging financial decisions that could harm her mother. And frankly, I've become uncomfortable with her attitude toward your resources. That's not the foundation I want for our life together." I wanted to believe him. But after weeks of watching him back Vanessa's increasingly unreasonable demands, I remained skeptical. "What changed your mind?" Ryan was quiet for a moment. "After we left James's office, I called my mother. I told her what had happened, expecting sympathy. Instead, she read me the riot act, asked if I'd lost my mind, helping my fiancé pressure her recently widowed mother to sell her home for a one-day celebration. Despite everything, I had to smile at that. Your mother sounds like a sensible woman." "She is," Ryan agreed. "She raised 3 kids on a teacher's salary after my dad left. When I told her about the $175,000 budget, she nearly had a heart attack. Said that kind of money could be a down payment on our first home together or seed funding if we ever wanted to start our own business." It was exactly the perspective Vanessa needed to hear. "Did you share those thoughts with Vanessa?" His expression clouded. "I tried. She didn't take it well. Said I was backing out on her, that I didn't understand how important this day was to her." He hesitated. "That's when I realized this wasn't just about the wedding. It's about something deeper." "What do you mean?" "Vanessa talks about your house as if she's somehow entitled to its value. When I suggested we could have a wonderful wedding for under $50,000, she said, 'Why should we settle when Mom is sitting on a gold mine she doesn't even need?'" Ryan looked genuinely troubled. "That's not the woman I thought I was marrying." Cold weight settled in my stomach. Was my daughter really so callous? Or Was this Ryan trying to manipulate me by turning me against Vanessa? I needed to proceed carefully. What exactly are you asking me to do, Ryan? Meet with us. Both of us. Help me show Vanessa that a marriage isn't built on extravagance, but on shared values and mutual respect. That includes respect for family boundaries. He leaned forward again, earnest. I still want to marry her, Grace. I love her. But I want to marry the woman who has your compassion and Thomas's integrity, not whatever this wedding has brought out in her. His words struck a chord. Thomas and I had always believed Vanessa had inherited the best of both of us. Had we been blind to the entitlement growing alongside those qualities? I'll need to think about this, I said finally. And I'll need to speak with James. Ryan nodded, standing to leave. I understand. Thank you for hearing me out. At the door, he turned back. Whatever you decide, I want you to know I respect what you did. Standing your ground couldn't have been easy. After he left, I called Eleanor immediately. You won't believe who just left my house, I began, recounting Ryan's unexpected visit and proposal. Do you believe him? She asked when I'd finished. I'm not sure, I admitted. It could be genuine concern, or it could be a more sophisticated attempt to get what they want. Or both, Eleanor suggested. People are complicated. He might genuinely care about Vanessa and your relationship with her, while still hoping for a financial outcome that benefits them. That's the problem, I sighed. I can't tell which is his primary motivation. What does your gut tell you? I considered this carefully. That he's telling at least partial truth. He seemed genuinely uncomfortable with Vanessa's attitude toward my resources. Then maybe this is an opportunity, Eleanor said thoughtfully. Not to let your guard down completely, but to see if there's a path forward that keeps your boundaries intact while potentially saving Vanessa from herself. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying Ryan's visit in my mind, weighing his words against his previous actions. Was this a genuine change of heart, or a more subtle strategy? And even if he was sincere, could Vanessa be brought around to a more reasonable perspective? The next morning, I called James to update him on this unexpected development. Interesting, he said when I'd finished. Very interesting indeed. Do you think it's genuine? I asked. It could be, James replied. People can surprise you. I've seen many cases where the prospect of marriage brings clarity about the kind of partnership someone truly wants. What should I do? Proceed with caution, but don't dismiss the opportunity. If Ryan is sincere, he could be a valuable ally in helping Vanessa understand the boundaries you're setting. James paused. However, I suggest we still proceed with the next phase of our plan. If nothing else, it will test Ryan's sincerity. I agreed, and we set a meeting for the following day to make the necessary arrangements. Whatever game Ryan might be playing, I was still several moves ahead. Later that afternoon, my phone rang with Vanessa's ringtone. My heart jumped. I'd missed her despite everything, but I took a deep breath before answering. Hi, Mom, she said, her voice subdued. Can we talk? We arranged to meet at a neutral location, the botanical gardens where we'd often gone together when she was a child. As I waited on a bench near the Japanese maples, I wondered which version of my daughter would show up. The manipulative one who had been pressuring me for weeks, or the thoughtful young woman I'd raised. Vanessa appeared, looking uncharacteristically uncertain. She'd dressed simply, jeans and a sweater rather than her usual polished professional attire, and her eyes were rimmed with red. Thanks for meeting me, she said, sitting beside me with a careful distance between us. Of course, I replied. I've missed you. Her composure cracked slightly. I've missed you too. She twisted her engagement ring nervously. Ryan told me he went to see you. He did. He wants us to scale back the wedding, says we're starting our marriage on the wrong foot by focusing so much on one day instead of our future together. She sounded confused, as if the idea had never occurred to her. He says we've been unfair to you. I waited, giving her space to continue working through her thoughts. I was so angry at first, she admitted. I felt like he was backing out on everything we'd planned. But then he asked me something that kept me up all night. What was that? She looked at me directly for the first time. He asked how we'd feel if our future child treated me the way I've been treating you. If they saw our home as an asset they were entitled to rather than— Her voice wavered. Rather than the place where they grew up loved and safe. My heart constricted. Perhaps Ryan understood more than I'd given him credit for. And how would you feel? I asked gently. Tears spilled onto her cheeks. Heartbroken. I'd feel heartbroken and used. She wiped at her face. Mom, I don't know what happened to me. When did I start seeing your house, the home you and Dad created for us, as just a pile of equity I could tap into? It was the question I'd been asking myself for weeks. I think it happened gradually, I said carefully. Small entitlements that grew larger over time. And perhaps I enabled it by always trying to give you everything, even when it wasn't in your best interest. Vanessa nodded slowly. Ryan said something similar. That love isn't always giving people what they want. Sometimes it's standing firm on what's right, even when it's hard. Those words, so similar to Thomas's philosophy, gave me hope that perhaps Ryan's visit had been genuine after all. I've been terrible, Vanessa continued, her voice breaking, manipulative and selfish. I don't even recognize myself anymore. This wedding? It's like it took over my brain. Every time I saw another perfect Instagram post or Pinterest board, I had to have more, be more extravagant. The wedding industry is designed to make you feel that way, I said, feeling a surge of maternal protectiveness despite everything. They profit from convincing you that one day defines your entire marriage. I know that now, she said quietly. Ryan and I talked, all night, about what kind of marriage we want, what values matter to us. She looked up at me. He said he fell in love with me because I reminded him of you, your strength, your kindness. He said lately I haven't been that person. That surprised me. He said that? Vanessa nodded. He was right, and it scared me, because I don't want to be the person I've been these past few months. She took a deep breath. We've canceled the Rose Hill Manor reservation. We're thinking of having the wedding at Riverside Park instead, where Dad used to take us for picnics. Simple, meaningful, focused on the commitment, not the spectacle. I felt a wave of relief and, yes, pride. Perhaps my daughter was finding her way back to the values Thomas and I had tried to instill in her. That sounds lovely, I said sincerely. Your father would approve. Vanessa reached for my hand hesitantly. I'm so sorry, Mom. For everything. For treating you like an obstacle to what I wanted rather than my mother who deserves my respect and gratitude. Her voice caught, "Can you ever forgive me?" The genuine remorse in her eyes melted the last of my defenses. Oh, Vanessa, of course I forgive you. I love you. That never changed, not even at our worst moments. As we embraced, I felt a profound sense of relief. But a small voice in the back of my mind reminded me to proceed with caution. Words were easy, sustained changed behavior was harder. And I still had phase 2 of my plan to execute. A plan that would reveal once and for all whether this transformation in Vanessa and Ryan was genuine or just another, more sophisticated manipulation. The reconciliation with Vanessa felt like a weight lifted from my shoulders. But I wasn't naive enough to think that one heartfelt conversation could undo months of entitlement. As Eleanor often quoted from her recovery program, trust, but verify. James and I proceeded with phase 2 of our plan, though I now felt conflicted about its necessity. If Vanessa and Ryan were genuinely changing their approach, was I being unfair by continuing to test them? But James reminded me that boundaries aren't just stated, they're maintained and respected over time. People can have sincere moments of clarity, he said during our meeting the following day. But lasting change requires consistent effort. Let's see if their new perspective holds when tested. A week after my reconciliation with Vanessa, I invited her and Ryan to Sunday dinner at my home. Peter and his wife were also coming, creating a family gathering that felt like an important step toward normalcy. The meal would also serve as the backdrop for the next stage of my plan. I spent Saturday cooking Thomas's recipes, his famous pot roast, scalloped potatoes made with heavy cream, and apple crumble with fruit from the trees he'd planted when we first moved in. Preparing his dishes always made me feel close to him, as if his hands were guiding mine. That evening, I sat on the porch, with a glass of wine, wondering what he would think of how I'd handled the situation. "Am I doing the right thing, Thomas?" I whispered to the stars. The night breeze rustled the oak leaves, and I chose to take it as his gentle affirmation. Sunday arrived warm and bright. Peter and his family came first, the twins racing to the backyard where the tire swing still hung from the maple tree. Watching them play in the same spot where Peter and Vanessa had spent countless childhood hours brought a bittersweet ache to my heart. "They're getting so big," I remarked to Peter's wife, Sarah. "Too big," she agreed with a laugh. "Daniel outgrew his school clothes again last month." Peter joined us, putting an arm around Sarah. "Mom, the garden looks amazing. How do you keep up with it all?" "I don't mind the work," I said truthfully. "It connects me to your father. He planned every inch of this landscape." Peter's expression softened. "I remember helping him put in those berry bushes. He let me use the post-hole digger and pretended not to notice when I made the rows crooked." The memory made me smile. "He straightened them after you went to bed. Said you'd never know the difference, but it would drive him crazy if they stayed that way." We both laughed, and for a moment I saw Thomas's smile in Peter's face, the crinkles around the eyes, the slightly crooked front tooth. Then the doorbell rang, announcing Vanessa and Ryan's arrival. The initial greeting was slightly awkward. Vanessa hugged me tightly, as if trying to convey through physical contact what words couldn't adequately express. Ryan shook Peter's hand with careful cordiality. The two men had only met a handful of times, and I could see Ryan was anxious to make a good impression after the wedding drama. "Something smells amazing," Vanessa said as we moved to the kitchen. "Dad's pot roast?" "And scalloped potatoes," I confirmed. "I thought we could use some comfort food." Dinner went more smoothly than I'd dared hope. Vanessa and Ryan shared their revised wedding plans. A simple ceremony in Riverside Park, followed by a reception at the historic boathouse there. The guest list had been cut from 200 to 75. The date moved to spring instead of the rushed December timeline. The budget was now a reasonable $40,000, with Ryan's parents still contributing their original $50,000, leaving some funds to start their married life together. "It feels right," Vanessa said, looking more relaxed than I'd seen her in months. "More like us." And Rebecca at the Parks Department said we can plant a memorial tree for Dad near the ceremony site. "Thomas would love that," I said, genuinely touched. Peter seemed pleasantly surprised by the changes. He'd been caught in the middle of our conflict, trying to support his sister while also concerned about my well-being. Now he visibly relaxed, as the conversation flowed naturally to other topics: the twins' school projects, Ryan's work, local politics. After dessert, while we sipped coffee in the living room, I decided it was time. I set down my cup and took a deep breath. "I have some news to share with all of you," I began. 5 pairs of eyes turned to me expectantly. "I've made a decision about the house." Vanessa tensed slightly. Ryan placed a supportive hand on her knee. Peter looked confused. "What decision, Mom?" he asked. "I thought things were working out with you staying here." "They are," I assured him. "But the conversations of the past few months have made me realize I need to be more proactive about my future and clearer about my legacy planning. I reached for the folder I'd placed on the side table earlier. I've been working with James to create a comprehensive estate plan that protects my interests while also providing clarity to all of you about what to expect. Peter's wife Sarah nodded approvingly. Her own parents had recently done similar planning, which had alleviated many potential conflicts among her siblings. That sounds wise, Ryan said carefully. Planning ahead creates security. I opened the folder and removed several documents. I've established a living trust that will hold title to this property and my other assets. The trust specifies that I will have lifetime use and control of everything. After my passing, the house and remaining assets will be divided equally between Vanessa and Peter. This was entirely expected information, and everyone nodded. Then I continued to the crucial part. However, there's an important provision I want you all to understand. I put on my reading glasses to refer directly to the document. In the event that I experience financial hardship or pressure from any beneficiary to liquidate my primary residence or major assets for their benefit prior to my passing, the trust includes a diversion clause. The atmosphere in the room subtly shifted. "What's a diversion clause?" Peter asked. "It means that if I'm pressured to sell this house or liquidate my retirement accounts before my death, the entire estate automatically transfers to the Thomas Wilson Memorial Scholarship Fund at the local community college instead of to my children." A stunned silence fell over the room. Vanessa's face had gone pale. Ryan's expression was unreadable. Peter simply looked confused. "Mom, why would you need something like that?" Peter finally asked. "None of us would force you to sell your home." I met his gaze steadily. Recent events suggested otherwise. Vanessa's eyes filled with tears. "This is because of me, isn't it? Because of how I behaved about the wedding." "It's because I need to be absolutely clear about my boundaries," I replied calmly. "This house isn't just property to me. It's the physical embodiment of the life your father and I built together. It's my financial security for whatever years I have left, and it's not available for liquidation to fund other people's wants, no matter how much I love them." Ryan surprised me by nodding slowly. "I think I understand," he said. "You're creating a legal framework that removes any incentive for future pressure or manipulation." "Exactly," I confirmed, impressed by his insight. "It ensures that any discussions about my assets are completely separated from expectations about inheritance." "But Mom," Vanessa protested, "I've already apologized. Ryan and I have completely changed our wedding plans. Why do you need legal protection from us now?" It was a fair question, and I took a moment to formulate my answer carefully. "This isn't about punishing you for what happened, Vanessa. It's about creating absolute clarity going forward. The best time to establish these boundaries is when they're not actively being tested." I softened my tone. "Think of it as insurance, not because I expect a fire, but because I want the peace of mind knowing I'm protected if one occurs." Peter, always the mediator, spoke up. "I think what Mom is saying is that she wants her financial independence to be structurally guaranteed, not just verbally respected." "Exactly," I agreed, grateful for his understanding. "It's not that I don't trust your current intentions. It's that I want to remove any future temptation or confusion by making my position legally unassailable." Ryan, to my surprise, was the most supportive. "This actually makes perfect sense from an estate planning perspective," he said. "My wealthier clients often include similar provisions, not because they don't trust their families, but because clear structures prevent conflicts before they arise." Vanessa wiped at her eyes, clearly still hurt, but making an effort to understand. "So nothing has actually changed about your plans for the house? Peter and I would still inherit it equally, as long as we don't try to push you to sell it before then?" "That's right," I confirmed. "This isn't about changing who receives what. It's about ensuring that those decisions remain entirely mine for as long as I live." As the initial shock wore off, the conversation gradually returned to normal. Peter asked practical questions about the trust structure. Sarah shared how her parents' similar planning had actually brought their family closer by removing financial uncertainty from their relationships. Ryan, drawing on his professional knowledge, discussed the tax benefits of my approach. Vanessa remained quiet, processing. As the evening wound down and Peter's family prepared to leave, she asked if she could stay behind for a few minutes. "I'll take the car home and come back for you," Ryan offered, sensing she needed private time with me. After everyone else had gone, Vanessa and I sat together on the porch swing, gently rocking in the quiet evening air. "I hurt you deeply, didn't I?" she finally said. "Enough that you felt you needed legal protection from me." I took her hand. "You scared me," I corrected gently. "You showed me a side of yourself I hadn't seen before, someone willing to manipulate and pressure to get what she wanted." "I hate that person," she whispered. "I don't want to be her anymore." "I don't think that's who you really are," I assured her. "I think you got caught up in a wedding culture that encourages excess, and you lost perspective temporarily. But you still felt you needed the diversion clause." I nodded slowly. "I did. Not because I don't believe in your sincerity now, but because I need to know that my boundaries are protected even if circumstances change in the future." Vanessa was quiet for a long moment, thoughtfully watching the fireflies emerge in the gathering dusk. Finally, she turned to me. "You know what's ironic? If you'd showed me this trust document 2 months ago, I would have been furious, seen it as a lack of trust, a punishment. And now?" I asked. "Now I see it as a gift," she said softly. "You're removing any possibility that I might ever slide back into treating you as a resource rather than my mother." She squeezed my hand. "You're protecting me from my worst self." Her insight brought tears to my eyes. This was the thoughtful daughter I'd raised, the one who could reflect and grow from difficult experiences. "I'm proud of you," I told her, "for understanding that. I still wish you hadn't felt it necessary," she admitted. "But I understand why you did." As the stars began to appear overhead, we talked more openly than we had in years. About Thomas, about grief, about how easy it is to confuse money with love, especially in times of emotional vulnerability.
I would be doing sticket to the year to finish the city event attending. Suspected at that the ingemitted each does fin good ending Nino give she God.
That my whole life. She looked at me apologetically. It's about time I stopped. When Ryan returned to pick her up, I saw them in a new light. Not as adversaries trying to manipulate me, but as a young couple learning important lessons about boundaries, values, and respect before beginning their marriage. Perhaps Thomas had been right all along. Sometimes the most valuable inheritance we leave our children isn't money or property, but the lessons they learn from how we live our principles. As their car pulled away, I felt a quiet satisfaction. Phase 2 had accomplished exactly what it needed to, not trapping them in manipulation as I'd originally planned, but testing the genuineness of their changed perspective. They had passed, and in doing so had given me hope that our relationship could be rebuilt on a healthier foundation. What I didn't yet realize was that the final test, the one I hadn't planned, was still to come. The weeks following our family meeting brought a peaceful rhythm to our relationships that I hadn't expected. Vanessa called regularly, but our conversations no longer revolved around wedding demands or veiled references to my house. Instead, she shared genuine updates about their scaled-back plans and asked my opinion without pressure or manipulation. Ryan surprised me by stopping by one Saturday morning with coffee and pastries. I was in the neighborhood looking at a property. "For a client," he explained, though the slight detour in his story suggested he'd made a special trip. I thought you might enjoy these from Madeline's Bakery." We sat on the porch, enjoying the crisp autumn air and talking about everything from local politics to his childhood in Michigan. Without the tension of the wedding budget hanging over us, I discovered Ryan had a dry wit and thoughtful perspective that reminded me a bit of Thomas. "I wanted to thank you," he said as he was leaving. "For the coffee?" "I should be thanking you," I replied. "No, for the trust document, for drawing a clear line." He looked slightly embarrassed. "I've been reading about healthy family boundaries. The therapist Vanessa and I started seeing suggested some books. This was news to me." "You're seeing a therapist?" Ryan nodded. We both realized we needed some help processing what happened and making sure we start our marriage on solid ground. He gestured vaguely toward the house. The whole situation made us question some fundamental assumptions about family, money, and respect. I was genuinely impressed. Many young couples I knew would have papered over such conflicts, pretending everything was fine while resentments festered beneath the surface. "That's very wise," I said sincerely. "It was Vanessa's idea," he admitted. "After your trust conversation, she said she never wanted to risk becoming the person who valued things over relationships again." As he drove away, I felt a surge of hope that perhaps the difficult months we'd endured might ultimately strengthen both Vanessa's character and her future marriage. Sometimes the most painful experiences yield the most valuable growth. In mid-October, about 6 weeks after our family meeting, I received an unexpected call from James Wilson. "Grace, do you have a moment? Something's come up that I think you should know about." His tone immediately put me on alert. "What's happened?" "I received a call from Ryan Calloway this morning. He was asking questions about your trust, specifically about the diversion clause." My stomach tightened. "What kind of questions?" "Technical ones, mostly. About how such clauses are typically enforced, what constitutes pressure in a legal sense, whether verbal discussions could trigger the provision." James paused. He was quite detailed in his inquiries. A cold feeling spread through me. After all the progress we'd seemingly made, was Ryan looking for loopholes? Ways to circumvent my protection? "What did you tell him?" I asked. I explained that the clause is quite robust, that any documented pattern of pressure to liquidate assets, whether verbal, written, or through intermediaries, could potentially trigger it. I also reminded him that as your attorney, my primary obligation is to your interests. I thanked James and hung up, my thoughts swirling with disappointment and suspicion. Had the apparent transformation in Vanessa and Ryan been merely a performance? A more sophisticated strategy to get what they wanted? The thought was heartbreaking. Before jumping to conclusions, I decided to speak with Eleanor. She had always been my most clear-eyed advisor, less emotionally invested than I was, but with a deep understanding of human nature from her years as a family counselor. "Don't panic yet," she advised after hearing about Ryan's call. "There could be innocent explanations. Maybe he's just trying to understand the legal framework better because of his real estate background. Or perhaps they're discussing long-term financial planning with their therapist. Or maybe they're looking for ways around my protection," I countered. "That's possible too," Eleanor acknowledged. "But you won't know until you ask them directly. Assuming the worst without evidence isn't fair to them or healthy for you." She was right, of course. The next day, I called Vanessa and invited her and Ryan to dinner that weekend. "Nothing formal," I assured her. "Just a chance to catch up." "We'd love to," she replied, sounding genuinely pleased. "Can we bring anything?" "Just yourselves," I said, trying to keep any hint of my concerns from my voice. As I prepared for their visit, I battled conflicting emotions. Part of me wanted to confront them immediately about Ryan's call to James. Another part feared what their answer might reveal. Had I been fooling myself about their change of heart? Had the trust document merely driven their manipulation underground rather than Eliminating it? Saturday evening arrived, and with it Vanessa and Ryan, bearing a bottle of wine and a bouquet of fall flowers despite my just-yourselves request. We chatted comfortably through dinner, discussing their upcoming wedding, now 6 months away, in the spring. The conversation flowed naturally, with none of the tension that had marked our earlier interactions around the event. As we moved to the living room with cups of coffee, I decided it was time to address the elephant in the room. "Ryan," I said carefully, "James Wilson mentioned you called him with some questions about my trust. If I'd expected defensiveness or evasion, I was mistaken." Ryan nodded immediately. "I did. I hope that was okay. I should have mentioned it to you directly." "What were you hoping to learn?" I asked, keeping my tone neutral. Ryan and Vanessa exchanged a glance that I couldn't quite interpret. Then Vanessa nodded slightly, as if giving him permission to continue. "I wanted to understand exactly what would constitute a violation of the diversion clause," he explained. "Not to find loopholes," he added quickly, seeing my expression, "but to make sure we never inadvertently cross lines we don't intend to cross." "What kind of lines are you concerned about?" I asked. Ryan set down his coffee cup. "For instance, if we were discussing long-term care options with you years from now, could that be interpreted as pressure to liquidate assets? Or if we help you research retirement communities at some point, could that seem like we're pushing you toward selling the house?" These were reasonable questions, but I still felt uneasy. Those scenarios seem quite far in the future. "They are," Vanessa interjected, "but we've been doing a lot of thinking about family dynamics and how money issues can create unintended patterns. We want to establish healthy boundaries now, not just for the wedding, but for our entire future relationship." It was a mature perspective, one that aligned with what they'd been saying about therapy. Still, I sensed there was more they weren't sharing. "Is there something specific prompting these concerns?" I asked directly. Another look passed between them. This time, Vanessa took a deep breath. "Mom, there's something we need to tell you. It's actually good news, but it's made us even more conscious of how we approach financial discussions with family." "What is it?" I asked, curiosity replacing some of my apprehension. Ryan reached for Vanessa's hand before speaking. "My Aunt Catherine passed away last month. I wasn't very close to her. She lived in Arizona, and we only saw each other every few years at family reunions." "I'm sorry for your loss," I said automatically. "Thank you. It was unexpected but peaceful, according to my cousins." He paused. "What we didn't expect was that she left me a substantial inheritance. This was a surprise." "How substantial?" "About $450,000, Ryan replied. "She never had children of her own, and she divided her estate among her nieces and nephews. I was as shocked as anyone. I had no idea she had that kind of money." Vanessa jumped in. "The inheritance cleared probate last week. It's why we've been asking so many questions about trust structures and family money dynamics. We want to be thoughtful about how we handle this unexpected windfall." The pieces began falling into place. Their questions about my trust weren't about finding ways to access my assets. They were about understanding how to protect their own newly acquired resources from creating similar tensions in their future family relationships. "We've decided to use part of it for a down payment on a house," Ryan continued. "A reasonable one, not some extravagant showplace. And we're setting aside money for future children's education." "That sounds very prudent," I said, relief washing over me. "The wedding is already budgeted separately," Vanessa added. "We're not increasing that again. We've learned our lesson about confusing celebration with competition." I smiled at her self-awareness. "I'm proud of how you're approaching this unexpected blessing." "Actually," Ryan said, looking slightly nervous, "there's one more thing we wanted to discuss with you." He glanced at Vanessa, who nodded encouragingly. "We'd like to establish a family trust similar to yours, one that protects these assets for our future children while still allowing us to help family members in genuine need. We've been talking with a financial planner," Vanessa explained. But we wanted your perspective too, since you've already created something similar. That's partly why Ryan was asking James all those technical questions. We're trying to learn from your example. The irony wasn't lost on me. The very protective structure I'd created to shield myself from their financial demands had now become a model they wanted to emulate. Life has a way of coming full circle when you least expect it. I'd be happy to share what I've learned, I told them sincerely. Though I'm hardly an expert. That's why I rely on James's guidance. Would it be okay if we consulted with him too? Vanessa asked. He clearly did an excellent job with your trust, and we trust his judgment. Of course, I agreed, touched by their request. I'm sure he'd be happy to advise you. As the evening continued, we discussed the principles behind my trust structure, the importance of clarity, the value of professional advice, the balance between generosity and boundaries. I shared how Thomas and I had approached financial decisions throughout our marriage, including mistakes we'd made along the way. When they finally left that night, I sat alone in my living room feeling a profound sense of closure. The journey we'd been through, from Vanessa's entitled demands to this thoughtful conversation about responsible stewardship, had been painful, but ultimately transformative. The next morning, I called James to let him know he might be hearing from Vanessa and Ryan about establishing their own trust. They've had an unexpected inheritance, I explained, and they're approaching it with remarkable maturity. I'm not entirely surprised, James replied. Ryan asked very thoughtful questions about generational wealth management. Not at all what I would expect from someone looking for loopholes. I misjudged his intentions, I admitted. We all view the world through the lens of our recent experiences, James said kindly. After what you went through with the wedding demands, a certain wariness was natural. That afternoon, I spent hours in Thomas's workshop, running my hands over the tools he'd used to create so much of our home. The smooth wooden handles were worn into the shape of his grip, testaments to years of careful craftsmanship. I could almost feel his presence as I contemplated how our children had grown into the values we'd tried to instill, even if the path had been circuitous. You were right, Thomas, I said aloud to the empty room. Give them roots and wings. The roots held, even when I thought they hadn't, and now they're finally ready to fly on their own. The wedding the following spring was exactly as Vanessa had described, simple, meaningful, focused on commitment rather than spectacle. Standing in Riverside Park beside the young maple tree planted in Thomas's memory, I watched my daughter and her husband exchange vows that reflected the lessons we'd all learned about love, respect, and true partnership. As mother of the bride, I'd been given a moment to speak during the ceremony. I'd carefully prepared my words, wanting to capture both the journey we'd traveled and the wisdom gained along the way. Love isn't just about grand gestures or perfect days, I told the gathered guests. It's about respect for boundaries, honesty in difficult moments, and the courage to grow through challenges. Thomas and I didn't have a perfect marriage, but we had a real one, built on mutual respect and shared values. I turned to face Vanessa and Ryan directly. You've already faced challenges that test many couples, navigating family expectations, making difficult financial decisions together, aligning your values when under pressure. The strength you've shown through this process gives me great confidence in the marriage you're beginning today. As I returned to my seat, I caught Eleanor's eye. She gave me a subtle thumbs up that made me smile. We both knew how far we'd come, from those tense conversations about wedding budgets and house sales. The reception at the historic boathouse was elegant in its simplicity. Flowers from local gardens, music from a small jazz quartet, food that celebrated local farms and Thomas's favorite recipes. The total cost was indeed within their original $40,000 budget, supplemented by thoughtful personal touches that money couldn't buy. During the father-daughter dance, Peter stepped in to waltz with Vanessa. I watched through tears as my son guided his sister around the floor, just as Thomas would have done. When the music changed and Ryan approached me for the mother-son dance, I felt a wave of gratitude for the family we were becoming, rebuilt on stronger foundations after weathering the storm we'd created together. "Thank you," Ryan said quietly as we danced, "for standing your ground when it mattered most. You helped us become better people and a stronger couple." "That wasn't my intention," I admitted. "I was just protecting myself. Sometimes the best lessons come from the boundaries others set for us," he replied. "Vanessa and I will be better parents someday because of what you taught us." Later, as I drove home to the house that had become both the battlefield and the peace treaty of our family conflict, I reflected on how different the outcome might have been. If I had capitulated to Vanessa's demands, surrendering my security for her momentary celebration, what message would that have sent? What pattern would it have established for their marriage and future family? Instead, by holding firm, by having a backup plan they never expected, I had given them something far more valuable than money for an extravagant wedding. I had shown them that love and respect go hand in hand, that healthy relationships require clear boundaries, and that true family support means wanting what's best for each other's long-term well-being, not just immediate desires. As I pulled into the driveway of the home Thomas and I had built together, I felt his presence more strongly than I had since his passing. The house wasn't just wood and stone and memories. It was the physical embodiment of the principles we had lived by and hoped to pass on. Now, finally, I knew that legacy would continue, not despite the difficult journey we'd traveled, but because of it. 3 years have passed since Vanessa and Ryan's wedding day. The maple sapling planted in Thomas's memory has grown steadily, just as our family relationships have flourished on the stronger foundation we built through our difficult journey. The changes in Vanessa have been the most remarkable. The entitled young woman who once demanded I sell my home for her wedding has matured into a thoughtful adult who regularly checks on my well-being without any hidden agenda. Last month, when I mentioned a leak in the upstairs bathroom, she and Ryan appeared the next day with toolboxes and supplies, spending the weekend making repairs rather than suggesting I hire someone, or worse, using it as an excuse to revisit downsizing conversations. "Dad taught me basic plumbing when I was in high school," Vanessa reminded me as she confidently replaced the worn gasket that had caused the problem. "I just never paid attention to how much maintenance this old house actually requires." Ryan, on his knees beside her holding a flashlight, nodded in agreement. "Now that we've owned our house for a few years, we understand why you were so resistant to letting this place go. The emotional connection grows stronger with every repair and improvement you make yourself." Their home, purchased with part of Ryan's inheritance, is a modest 3-bedroom craftsman in a family-friendly neighborhood across town. They've approached home ownership with the same careful stewardship that Thomas and I practiced, making thoughtful improvements while living well within their means. No granite countertops or luxury bathroom fixtures, just solid, practical updates that enhance livability without excessive debt. The most significant change in our family dynamic came 18 months ago, when Vanessa called with news that left me speechless. She was pregnant. After so many years of focusing on her career, marriage, and personal growth, she was finally ready to embrace motherhood. The joy in her voice was unmistakable, but so was the hint of nervousness. "Mom, I have no idea what I'm doing," she confessed. "How did you manage when Peter and I were babies?" Those conversations opened a new chapter in our relationship, one where Vanessa genuinely valued my experience and wisdom rather than seeing me as an obstacle or resource to be managed. Throughout her pregnancy, we grew closer than we had been since her childhood, bonding over her questions and concerns while I carefully avoided imposing unwanted advice. Thomas James Calloway, named for his grandfather and great-grandfather, arrived on a snowy January morning last year. Holding my grandson for the first time, I experienced a rush of love that equaled what I'd felt with my own children, along with a profound sense of gratitude for the healing our family had undergone. If we hadn't confronted and resolved our Conflict over the wedding and house. What sort of relationship would I have with this precious boy and his parents? He has your eyes, Ryan whispered as he watched me cradle the newborn. That same determined look. Heaven help us all, Vanessa joked weakly from her hospital bed. One stubborn woman in the family is enough. I smiled, acknowledging the compliment, hidden in her teasing. That stubbornness saved our relationship, I reminded her gently. Sometimes standing firm is the most loving thing we can do. She reached for my hand. I know that now, and I hope I have the courage to be just as strong. When TJ needs me to hold boundaries rather than give in, the wisdom in her words confirmed how far she'd come from the entitled bride-to-be who had seen my financial security as something she could appropriate for her own desires. As TJ approaches his first birthday, I've had the joy of regular visits and weekly family dinners, sometimes at my house, sometimes at theirs. Watching Vanessa navigate the challenges of new motherhood with grace and patience has been a revelation. The therapist she and Ryan began seeing before their wedding has clearly helped them build a partnership based on mutual respect and clear communication. Last Sunday, as we finished dinner at their home, Ryan cleared his throat in a way that immediately caught my attention. It was the same nervous gesture he'd made before difficult conversations in the past. Grace, there's something Vanessa and I would like to discuss with you, he began, exchanging a glance with my daughter. I felt a momentary tightening in my chest, an echo of those tense conversations from years ago. What is it? Vanessa picked up TJ from his high chair, settling him on her lap. It's about your house, Mom. The familiar words triggered an automatic defensiveness that I tried to keep from showing. What about it? We're concerned about some of the maintenance issues you've been mentioning, Ryan continued carefully. The roof that needs replacing, the outdated electrical system, the basement that floods during heavy rains. I relaxed slightly, recognizing that their concerns were practical rather than manipulative. Those things have been issues for years. Thomas and I always handled them one project at a time. We know, Vanessa assured me. And we respect how, well, you've maintained the property on your own since Dad died. But some of these repairs are becoming safety concerns, especially as you get older. Though I bristled slightly at the reference to my age, I couldn't deny the truth in her words. At 68, I no longer moved with the ease I once had. The fall I'd taken on the basement stairs last winter had frightened all of us, even though I'd escaped with just bruises. What exactly are you suggesting? I asked, my tone more cautious than confrontational. Ryan and Vanessa exchanged another look before she continued. We'd like to help with the major repairs, not taking over or making decisions for you, she added quickly, but providing financial and practical support to make sure the house remains safe and comfortable for you. This was not at all what I'd expected. You want to invest in maintaining my house, not encouraging me to sell it? Ryan smiled. Exactly the opposite. We want to help ensure you can stay there as long as you want to. The house isn't just important to you. It's TJ's connection to his grandfather and our family history. To emphasize his point, he gestured toward the dining table where we sat, the very one Thomas had built for our home, which Vanessa and Ryan had asked to have when they bought their house. They'd restored it carefully, honoring Thomas's craftsmanship while creating new family memories around it. We've set aside some money from my aunt's inheritance specifically for this purpose, Ryan explained. We call it the Grace Stays Put Fund. I laughed despite the tears that had begun to form. You named a fund after me? After your stubbornness, Vanessa clarified with an affectionate smile. And after the grace you showed us when we were being terrible about the wedding, the wordplay wasn't lost on me. Grace Stays Put, both my name and a declaration of their support for my independence. This is very generous, I said carefully. But I'm not comfortable with you spending your inheritance on my house. That money should be for your future, for TJ's education. We've already set aside funds for those priorities, Ryan assured me. This is something we've thought through carefully, just as you taught us to do with financial decisions. Vanessa shifted TJ to her shoulder as he began to fuss. Mom, do you remember what you told me the day after you revealed your trust with the diversion clause? About how the trust wasn't about punishing me but about creating clarity? I nodded. This is the same principle, she continued. We're not trying to take control or create obligation. We're establishing clarity about our commitment to supporting your independence and honoring Dad's legacy. The thoughtfulness behind their offer touched me deeply. This wasn't the entitled demand of years past, but a genuine expression of respect and support. I'll need to think about it, I said finally, and talk to James about how to structure this properly. Ryan nodded approvingly. Absolutely. We wouldn't want it any other way. As they walked me to my car later that evening, Vanessa handed TJ to me for a final cuddle before I left. His sleepy weight in my arms, the trust with which he nestled against my shoulder, felt like the physical embodiment of the healing our family had experienced. Whatever you decide about the house fund, we respect your choice, Vanessa said quietly. That's what I learned from our whole wedding fiasco, that real love respects autonomy and boundaries. I kissed TJ's downy head before handing him back to his mother. When did you get so wise? I had a good teacher, she replied, even if I was a slow learner. The next day, I called James to discuss Vanessa and Ryan's proposal. He listened carefully, asking clarifying questions about their intentions and my comfort level with the arrangement. It's an interesting reversal, he observed when I'd finished explaining. 3 years ago, we were creating legal protections to prevent them from pressuring you to sell the house. Now they're actively working to help you stay in it. Life is full of surprises, I agreed. But I need to be sure this doesn't create unhealthy dynamics or expectations down the road. James considered this thoughtfully. We could structure it as a formal family maintenance trust. They would contribute funds, but an independent trustee, perhaps someone from my firm, would oversee disbursements for approved repair projects. That maintains clear boundaries, while allowing them to support your commitment to aging in place. Would that protect everyone's interests? I asked. I believe so. It creates transparency, prevents any implicit obligations, and ensures the funds are used specifically for maintaining your home's safety and functionality. After further discussion, I decided to accept Vanessa and Ryan's offer. Under the structure James suggested, the Grace Stays Put Trust was formally established the following month, with my children contributing the initial funding and James's colleague serving as independent trustee. The first project, replacing the aging electrical system, was completed before winter, making the house safer while preserving its historic character. At our Christmas gathering, with Peter's family joining us at my home, I found myself looking around the living room with a deep sense of contentment. The house that had nearly become a battleground was now more firmly than ever the heart of our family. Thomas's craftsmanship surrounded us in the built-in bookshelves, the carefully restored woodwork, the furniture he'd made with his own hands. His spirit lived on not just in these physical objects, but in the values that had finally taken root, in our children's hearts. As if reading my thoughts, Peter raised his glass in a toast. To Dad, whose work on this house taught us about patience, quality, and long-term thinking. And to Mom, whose stubbornness about staying here taught us about boundaries, respect, and standing firm on what matters most. To Grace Stays Put, Ryan added with a warm smile in my direction. Vanessa, bouncing TJ on her knee, completed the sentiment. And to the lessons we learn when we least expect them, even from wedding disasters and backup plans. Later that night, after everyone had gone home and the house was quiet except for the familiar creaking of old timbers settling, I sat in Thomas's chair by the fireplace, feeling more secure than I had in years. Not just financially secure in my beloved home, but emotionally secure in the knowledge that my family had grown through conflict rather than being destroyed by it. The backup plan I'd created to protect myself from my daughter's wedding demands had ultimately protected something far more precious: our capacity to learn, grow, and rebuild trust, even after difficult confrontations. In standing firm on my boundaries, I'd given Vanessa and Ryan the opportunity to recognize and correct their entitled behavior before it permanently damaged our relationship or their marriage. Sometimes, the greatest gift we can offer those we love isn't easy compliance with their demands, but the courage to say no when necessary, and the patience to wait for understanding to dawn. Thomas had taught me that through his quiet strength during our 40 years together. Now, through our difficult journey over the wedding and the house, I'd managed to pass that wisdom on to our children. As I climbed the stairs to bed, the same stairs Thomas and I had restored spindle by spindle our first year in the house, I ran my hand along the banister he had crafted. "We did okay after all," I whispered to his memory. "They finally understood what you were trying to teach them all along." The house creaked its familiar response, and I smiled, secure in the knowledge that whatever the future held, the foundation we had built, both in this physical home and in our family relationships, would stand strong for generations to come. If you've enjoyed this story of family boundaries and unexpected lessons, make sure to subscribe to my channel. Next week, I'll be sharing how I helped my son navigate a difficult career decision using the same principles of respect and clarity that saved my relationship with Vanessa. Remember, sometimes the most loving thing we can do is stand firm on what matters most. Thank you for joining me on this journey. 5 years have passed since I first shared my story about Vanessa's wedding demands and the backup plan that changed everything. Many of you have written asking for an update, wondering how our family's journey has continued to unfold. Today, I want to share the final chapter of this story, one that brings us full circle in ways I never could have imagined. Last month, I celebrated my 70th birthday in the same living room where this story began with Vanessa's engagement announcement 5 years earlier. But this celebration was different in every meaningful way. Instead of tension and hidden agendas, the house overflowed with genuine warmth and 3 generations of laughter. TJ, now an energetic 3-year-old with Thomas's curious nature and mechanical aptitude, raced through the house with his baby sister Elizabeth, named after my mother, toddling determinedly behind him. The Grace Stays Put Trust has funded several significant improvements over the years: an updated heating system, a restored front porch, and most recently, child-proofing measures that allow my grandchildren to explore safely while respecting the home's historic character. My relationship with Vanessa has deepened beyond anything I could have hoped for during those difficult days of wedding planning. The entitled daughter who once saw my house as a financial resource to be tapped for her benefit has become a thoughtful advocate for my independence and dignity. Each time we face decisions about my aging or the house's maintenance, she approaches the conversation with careful respect for my autonomy. "What's your preference, Mom?" has replaced "you should" or "it would be easier if" in her vocabulary. Perhaps the most meaningful evolution has been in how Vanessa parents her own children. I've watched her set gentle but clear boundaries, teaching TJ the same lessons about respect and consideration that Thomas and I had tried to instill in her. Lessons that initially didn't seem to take root, but have now blossomed fully in the next generation. "No, we don't grab things from Grandma's shelves without asking," I overheard her telling TJ last Christmas. "This is Grandma's special home that Great-Grandpa Thomas built with his hands. We show respect by asking permission." The simple interaction brought tears to my eyes, not just for the boundary being taught, but for the reverence in Vanessa's voice when speaking of her father's craftsmanship. She'd finally internalized the values we'd tried to instill all along. Ryan, too, has proven himself to be a man of integrity far beyond what I recognized during our initial conflict. His career has flourished, but unlike many successful young professionals, he's maintained a balanced perspective on money and its proper place in family relationships. The family trust they established with his inheritance continues to grow under careful management, providing security without fostering the entitlement that once threatened to derail their marriage. But the most profound chapter in our story began 3 months ago when I suffered a minor stroke while gardening. The episode was frightening, but thankfully left no permanent damage apart from some weakness in my left hand. After a brief hospital stay and 2 weeks of rehabilitation, I was cleared to return home with some modifications to ensure my safety. Check-in. Experience forced us all to confront the reality I had been avoiding, that regardless of my wishes or the Grace Stays Put fund, there might come a time when living alone in a 2-story Victorian farmhouse would no longer be practical or safe. Dreaded the conversation I knew we needed to have, fearing a return to the house-selling pressure I'd experienced years before. But when Vanessa, Ryan, Peter, and Sarah gathered in my hospital room the day before my discharge, the discussion took an unexpected turn. "We've been talking," Vanessa began, her tone gentle but direct, "about how to honor your independence while ensuring you have the support you might need going forward." I braced myself for the retirement community brochures or assisted living suggestions that seemed inevitable. Instead, Ryan continued, "We've drawn up some plans we'd like you to consider. Not for you to move, but for us to move to you." They unfolded, architectural drawings across my hospital bed, plans for converting the detached workshop behind my house into a small, accessible cottage where I could live on a single level while maintaining my privacy and independence. The main house, with its historic details and Thomas's craftsmanship, would be occupied by Vanessa's family, ensuring it remained in our family while receiving the care and maintenance it deserved. The children would grow up surrounded by great-grandpa's woodwork, Vanessa explained, her eyes shining with emotion. "You'd have your own space but never be alone. And the house would continue as the heart of our family, just as you and Dad always intended." The thoughtfulness of their proposal left me speechless. This wasn't the self-serving suggestion of 5 years ago, but a carefully considered plan that honored everyone's needs and prioritized the preservation of Thomas's legacy. "We don't need an answer now," Peter added, sensing my overwhelmed state. "And we have other options to discuss if this doesn't feel right. The important thing is that whatever happens next is your choice, Mom, not something pushed on you." Those words, "your choice," reflected how profoundly our family dynamics had transformed. From entitlement and pressure, we had evolved to mutual respect and genuine concern for each other's well-being. Over the following weeks, as I recovered at home with the help of visiting nurses and my children's regular presence, I thought deeply about their proposal. I walked through Thomas's workshop, envisioning the conversion they had suggested. The Ba-Bai stone building had excellent bones, with southern exposure that would provide natural warmth and light. The large windows overlooked my beloved garden, which TJ had already begun helping me tend under my supervision. I consulted with James Wilson, now semi-retired but still my trusted advisor. "What do you think?" I asked after explaining the proposal. "Is this a genuine solution or a sophisticated version of the same old pressure?" James considered thoughtfully. 5 years ago, I would have advised extreme caution. But based on everything you've told me about how Vanessa and Ryan have changed, this appears to be a thoughtful plan that genuinely respects your independence while addressing practical concerns. He helped me draft a formal agreement that would protect everyone's interests, securing my lifetime rights to the property while establishing clear boundaries between my cottage and the main house. Every detail was designed to maintain my dignity and autonomy while providing the safety net I might increasingly need. Last week, we gathered around Thomas's dining table, now in Vanessa and Ryan's home, but soon to return to its original place, in our family house, to sign the papers making our new arrangement official. The construction will begin next month, with the cottage ready for me to move into before winter arrives. As I signed my name to the documents, I felt Thomas's presence more strongly than I had in years. The path forward wasn't what either of us had envisioned when we restored the old Victorian together, yet somehow it honored our deeper intentions for a home that would nurture generations of our family. "I wish Dad could see this," Vanessa said quietly as she added her signature beside mine. He would love knowing his grandchildren will grow up in the house he poured so much of himself into. He sees it, I assured her, covering her hand with mine. And I think he's pleased with how we've all grown, especially through our conflicts. Later that evening, as Ryan helped me walk through the workshop discussing specific adaptations for the cottage, he asked a question that took me by surprise. You ever think about what might have happened if we'd succeeded in pressuring you to sell this place for our wedding? Where we all might be now? I considered this carefully. I think we would have lost far more than a house. The wedding would have come and gone in a day, leaving nothing but photographs and depleted finances. But more importantly, we would have established a pattern of entitlement and manipulation that might have poisoned our family relationships permanently. Ryan nodded soberly. Vanessa and I have talked about that a lot in therapy over the years. How close we came to building our marriage on a foundation of taking rather than respecting. He gestured toward the main house. These physical foundations have stood for over a century because they were built with integrity and care. We almost failed to give our marriage the same solid start. His insight confirmed how far we'd all come from those tense confrontations in James's office. The backup plan I'd created to protect myself had ultimately protected all of us, from patterns that would have damaged our relationships far more severely than any temporary conflict over boundaries. As I prepare to move into my cottage later, this year, I find myself reflecting on the unlikely journey that brought us here. The daughter who once tried to force me to sell my house for her extravagant wedding will soon be living in that very house, preserving it for future generations while ensuring I can age with dignity and independence just steps from my garden. The backup plan I never wanted to need became the catalyst for growth none of us expected. By standing firm when it would have been easier to give in, I gave my family the opportunity to confront uncomfortable truths about entitlement, respect, and the true meaning of love. Thomas used to say that the most valuable inheritances aren't things but lessons, not what we give our children but what we teach them through how we live. In my case, the lesson came through how I refused to be manipulated, even by those I loved most. Now, as I watch TJ carefully measuring boards in his grandfather's workshop under his father's patient guidance, I see Thomas's legacy continuing, not just in the physical house he built, but in the values that finally took root in our family's heart. The craftsmanship, the patience, the understanding that quality cannot be rushed and boundaries should not be breached. These are the true inheritances that will serve future generations long after material assets have come and gone. So if you find yourself facing pressure from loved ones to compromise your financial security or independence for their benefit, remember my story. Sometimes the most loving gift we can offer isn't easy compliance, but the courage to stand firm. Sometimes the backup plan we create to protect ourselves becomes the very thing that saves relationships worth preserving. And sometimes the house we refuse to sell becomes the home where healing finally happens, exactly as it was always meant to be. Yesterday marked the first anniversary of my move into the cottage, and what a transformative year it has been. The conversion of Thomas's workshop exceeded all my expectations. The builders preserved the original stone walls and exposed beams while creating a bright, accessible living space that perfectly suits my needs. Large windows overlook my garden, now flourishing under the shared care of 3 generations. The cottage feels both intimately connected to and comfortably separate from the main house, exactly the balance we had hoped to achieve. Moving day last autumn brought unexpected emotions. Though I was only relocating a few hundred feet across our property, leaving the house Thomas and I had shared for decades stirred deep feelings of loss. What helped most was watching Vanessa approach the transition with such reverence for her father's craftsmanship and our shared history. "We're not changing anything Dad built," she assured me as she helped arrange my favorite furniture in the cottage's living room. "Just maintaining and preserving it for TJ and Elizabeth to appreciate as they grow up." True to her word, Vanessa and Ryan have approached their stewardship of the main house with remarkable respect. The kitchen remains largely as Thomas designed. Though they updated the appliances. The built-in bookshelves still hold my collection of classics alongside their modern titles. The original woodwork continues to gleam with the same beeswax polish Thomas always used. Life in the cottage has given me something I hadn't fully appreciated I needed. The perfect balance of independence and connection. My mornings begin with coffee on my private porch, watching the sun rise over the garden. Most days, TJ appears around 8 o'clock, tapping politely on my door, before bursting in with whatever treasure or observation has captured his attention. Grandma, the robins built a nest in great-grandpa's maple tree. Or, Grandma, I found a rock that looks exactly like a turtle. His visits are the highlight of my days, entirely different from the obligation-driven check-ins I'd feared might come with living so close to family. TJ comes because he wants to, because he finds genuine joy in our connection. Elizabeth, now nearly 2, toddles after her brother, already developing her own relationship with me distinct from her parents' influence. One unexpected blessing of our arrangement has been witnessing Vanessa's parenting up close, seeing how she balances boundaries and love in ways that make me proud and occasionally wistful. If only Thomas could see the lessons we struggled to teach finally bearing fruit in how she raises her children. No, TJ, we don't interrupt Grandma during her rest time unless it's important, I overheard her explaining firmly but kindly after. He had bounded toward my cottage during my afternoon nap. Remember our conversation about respecting people's private time? That applies to Grandma, too, even though we love her and want to share things with her. These small moments of witnessing, the values we'd tried to instill being passed to the next generation have been profoundly healing. The entitlement that once clouded Vanessa's perspective has been replaced by a deep appreciation for boundaries and mutual respect, lessons learned through our painful conflict but now embodied in her daily interactions. Ryan has surprised me. Most. The man I once suspected of calculating how to access my assets has become one of my strongest advocates for independence. He built raised garden beds at a height that accommodates my occasional back pain, installed discreet handrails in my bathroom without making them look institutional, and regularly invites me to consult on house maintenance decisions without obligation to participate. This is still your home, too, he reminds me often. Your voice matters in how we care for Thomas's craftsmanship. Peter and his family visit monthly, with the twins now teenagers who roll their eyes good-naturedly at TJ's enthusiasm but still enjoy helping their grandmother in the garden. Our extended family gatherings flow naturally between the main house and my cottage, with the interconnected spaces accommodating both togetherness and privacy. Last month brought an unexpected test of our new dynamics when Ryan received a significant promotion that would require relocating to a city about 2 hours away. The opportunity represented a substantial increase in responsibility and compensation, exactly the career advancement he had been working toward. I braced myself for difficult conversations about selling the property or changing our living arrangement. Instead, Ryan and Vanessa approached the situation with remarkable thoughtfulness. We have options, Vanessa explained during a family dinner where they shared the news. Ryan could commute 2 days a week and work remotely the other days. We could decline the promotion and he could continue his current position. Or we could reconsider our living situation entirely. What struck me most was their genuine openness to all possibilities, including sacrificing a career opportunity rather than disrupting our family arrangement if that seemed best for everyone. What matters most, Ryan emphasized, is making this decision together with everyone's needs considered, not just our professional ambitions. After much discussion involving everyone, including input from TJ who was adamant about not leaving his school and friends, they decided Ryan would accept the position but commute 2 days a week while working remotely the remainder. The arrangement requires some sacrifice on their part, earlier mornings for Ryan on commuting days, more solo parenting for Vanessa, but preserves the multi-generational living situation that has enriched all our lives. What touched me most about the process was that at no point did I feel I needed to protect myself from manipulation or hidden agendas. The trust we've rebuilt allowed for honest, respectful discussion, where all perspectives received equal consideration. James Wilson retired fully last spring, but not before helping us update all our legal agreements to reflect our current living arrangement. At our final meeting, he made an observation that perfectly captured our family's transformation. "When you first came to me about Vanessa's wedding demands," he reminded me, "we were creating legal protections against family members you couldn't trust. Now we're creating frameworks that support family members you can trust completely. That's quite a journey in 5 years." The Grace Stays Put Trust has evolved into a more comprehensive family property trust, with clear provisions for maintenance of both the main house and cottage, succession plans for future generations, and balanced protections for everyone's interests. The legal structure provides security, but the true foundation of our arrangement is the mutual respect and consideration we've developed through confronting and resolving our conflict. Recently, while helping Vanessa organize Thomas's old woodworking plans in the basement, I found a letter he had written to our children but apparently never shared. It was dated just months before his unexpected death, tucked inside an envelope labeled, "For Peter and Vanessa when the time is right." With trembling hands, I opened it, unsure whether to read its contents or pass it directly to our children. The first lines convinced me to continue. "My dear children, as I look toward the future, I want to share some thoughts about the home your mother and I have created. This house is more than wood and stone. It's the physical embodiment of our values and the lessons we've tried to teach you." Thomas went on to express his hope that the house would remain in the family if possible, not because of its financial value, but because of the legacy of craftsmanship and care it represented. He acknowledged that circumstances might make selling necessary someday, but emphasized that any such decision should prioritize Grace's security and independence above all other considerations. "Your mother's well-being must always come first," he wrote firmly. "No financial need or want of yours should ever take precedence over her security in the home we built together." Reading his words, I felt a profound sense of closure. Thomas had anticipated the very conflict that would emerge after his death, and had tried to prevent it with clear guidance. Though his letter hadn't reached our children in time to avert our painful journey, his wisdom had eventually prevailed, through the lessons we learned along the way. I shared the letter with Vanessa and Peter that evening, watching tears fill their eyes as they read their father's guidance that now, years after our conflict, they were finally living. "By completely. He knew us so well," Vanessa whispered, "even our weaknesses." "And he loved us anyway," Peter added, running his finger over his father's signature. As I look toward the future from the peaceful sanctuary of my cottage, surrounded by family yet secure in my independence, I'm filled with gratitude for the difficult journey that brought us here. The backup plan I created to protect myself from my daughter's wedding demands ultimately protected something far more precious: our ability to grow into the family Thomas always believed we could be, one founded on respect, boundaries, and genuine love that seeks the other's highest good, rather than personal gain.